We got a witness. We got a worker. We've got a world changer. What else do we have there?
Warrior.
Got a warrior. Looking forward to that. We had wiped out, but Brian wouldn't take it. He said he was too busy. But I got a feeling some of you felt wiped out recently through job, boss, work, co-workers, loans, whatever goes with work. I don't know where to go with this. I'm not a professional worker. I'm a professional minister. And I know the joke. I've heard it 200 times. We only work on Sunday for about an hour. But I have been in the workforce, and I've seen some really, really crummy jobs. I have been down with labor crews trying to keep up with a bunch of Latinos that had green cards that were more professional at picking onion seed than I was. In a hot sun that reached by noontime about 100, we took a break for lunch, and we only put in 2 hours later after lunch because it was getting up to 120 degrees. And that's when I said, Bruce, you're going to go to college. I couldn't keep up with those guys. I don't know if you've ever seen picking cotton, but this was picking onion seed. And I don't know if you know how they grow onion seed. It just pops up out of rotten onions. You grow an onion field, and the onions that they don't send off to Burger King, they let rot. And after it rots, they grow seeds, and then they cut those seeds, send them off, and someone else buys seeds to plant another onion. That's how it happens. And I, at about a 15-year-old kid, had a chance to be a scab for the first time in my life. Cross the picket line. That was back in the day of Cesar Chavez. I'm sorry if I use illustrations some of you guys don't get. Bullwinkle and Rocky might pop in. I might mention the Beverly Hillbillies. I'm sorry, it's just what you get when you get an older guy up here talking. But Cesar Chavez came in and he said, we're going to make these guys have all jobs and we're going to let them work. And they went on strike. A lot of Mexicans did. Right on the border, they were green card guys that came across the border. And I knew them as friends. I worked with them in the field. But when they went on strike, they asked us, guys, if we'd run across the picket lines and go in. And I mean, we got clotted with rocks in our bus. We got yelled at and screamed at. But I made $1.30 an hour. Back in the day. I could put gas in my car at 30 cents a gallon. So I've done a little bit of work. But I want to say, as I look at the schedule, it's time for your discussion groups. Huh?
Improvise.
It was suggestions.
Improvise. Adapt and improvise.
I don't know where to go. I'm going to cut some out of this message because I want you to get to those discussion groups. I put some questions down there I want you to think about because you guys are the workers. You guys are the ones that are out there in the trenches. You're the one dealing with bosses, co-workers, startup businesses. Some of you have been fired. Some of you have lost jobs. Some of you have started jobs. Some of you are the bosses. Some of you are the laborers. There's a whole group here that is primed and ready to understand how do you be a witness on the workplace. How do I look at the workplace as a place of worship? Isn't it cursed? Didn't it happen at the garden that somehow we got stuck with weeds and sweat and cut fingers? I don't like work. I hate work. I complain about work. I complain about the boss. I complain about my salary. And then I realize I'm complaining about something that God has blessed me with. And before there was a curse, there was a blessing. Before there's a curse, if you get a chance to go back and see Genesis 3 where the curse happened, before that in chapter 2, there's a blessing of work. Tend the garden. Take care of it. Bless it. I'll bless you. We'll work together. There was a harmonious moment there. We ruined it. But God's redeemed it. And I think part of the problem with working now, we're going to get to the real spiritual stuff later. You know, when we start talking about warrior, okay, world changers, witness, that's spiritual stuff. But to get through there and past it, you got to get past this secular thing called work. And I submit to you, it's not secular. It's not secular. It's spiritual. And if you read Genesis 2 before you read Genesis 3, you realize there's something really special here that God wants to work with you as a partner and share with you at work. And not look at work as something that just I got to go to. It's menial. It's dead end. So, if you turn to Colossians chapter 3, we'll look at God's policy book on working. There's a Bible on the table there. If you don't have one, we tried to put an extra one out. While you're turning there, I think we're on page 16 if you haven't gotten there yet. When I walk this way, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Help me out. I got you listed down as my intro. You guys. You're my intro. You got to help me out. Shout out something for me. I want you, not all of you, but a few of you that still feel that. What was the worst job you ever had? What was the worst job you ever had? Yeah.
Feeding lobsters
There's a different one.
in a laboratory.
Good.
Lobsters are the cockroaches of the sea, and what they eat, you do not want to know.
Ugh.
Hot tar roofing in the summer.
Hot tar roofing in the summertime. Ugh. I've seen those guys and said, not me. Ugh. What else? Yeah.
Picking cotton in Chandler, Arizona in the summertime.
Oh,
That's up there. We need a different kind of bingo now.
hardcore.
Yeah.
Scrubbing orange poop off the walls as a park ranger.
What kind of poop?
Orange, like bright neon orange. I don't know how they did it. They totally missed the toilet and just plastered the wall. And I was there
Are you
scrubbing
talking animal or human?
it. Unfortunately human, but as a park ranger you see it all, man. We have to get down there and scrub it off.
I need a drink.
I got one. Worked at a sewer plant in Mexico.
A sewer plant in Mexico.
I had to wear a white jumpsuit, boots, all covered up, white. Yeah.
We have a winner.
We have a winner.
Hey, I found a human bone.
No.
Bone out of there. I was cleaning it. Oh, Joe. It wasn't no chicken bone either. It was my partner too.
Ugh. You wouldn't find that in an American sewer. No.
Italian in New York.
Okay. Any others? Want to gross us out?
Cleaning manure lands in a dairy.
Manure. Ugh.
Not good, man.
Yeah. Okay. We got it. I'm saying this is probably the bottom rung of work, okay? Can God get involved in even that? Can God be involved in something that's that ugly and gross? Huh? Well, have you started reading Colossians 3 yet? Verses 23, 24. Let me read it with you. Whatever you do, oh, wait a minute. What was that word again? Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive what? The inheritance as your reward. You are working and serving the Lord Christ. Wow. That's a very unusual rendering. I'm going to the end before I start the beginning. Lord Christ. That's a very unusual wording. You don't see it a lot. 2 times in the whole New Testament do they put that order. You'll see Christ, you'll see Lord. But you don't see this all the time. And a lot of times that does that for an emphasis. And the emphasis here, I believe, is because the Lord in their lives in that day was Caesar. Lord Caesar was very common. Lord Caesar, Lord Caesar. And I got a feeling Paul right here is getting cutesy. And he's saying, you want to talk about your real boss? Let's go to the highest power we can. We'll go above Caesar. We're going to Jesus. We're going to make him the Lord. He is the new Caesar in our lives, and let's work for him. Now, guys, I don't know what your complaint is. I know I've worked with men before in ministries, and so even though I haven't been in the workforce, I have worked with men side by side, discipling with them and meeting with them on monthly, weekly basis. Sometimes it's counseling, sometimes it's just one-on-one, sometimes it's in a ministry we called Top Gun. And Top Gun was a ministry I would take about 4 or 5 guys through personally for a whole 9-month period. And over those 9 months, we hit everything. Once a week, we hit it. Family, God, pornography, all of the things that were out there. And one of the topics was work. And when it came to work, boy, it hit the fan. Because it wasn't just about gross out, crummy, eeky jobs. It was about the issue of who I am as a man. How am I as a man, as I identify with work? And guys that somehow don't incorporate Christ into the formula here that Paul has, we miss out. And you're just going to work yourself to death. You're going to work for the world. You're going to work for people. One of your questions is to talk about the dangers of being a people pleaser. Pleasing the boss, pleasing a coworker, trying to show off, trying to do this. The boss, I got to impress. And the scriptures say, be careful of that. Whatever you do. Now that word whatever is pretty strong. It's, I won't get into it, but it kind of means whatever. But not the, whatever. It's demonstrative. Whatever. And it kind of carries with it an impact. You cannot name anything that doesn't come under this kind of guideline here as far as work. You cannot come up with anything. You cannot name your menial job, your dead-end job, whatever you want to say. The lowest of lows, we'll go to the sewers of Mexico if we have to, but Jesus will meet you there. You may not think so. Picking cotton, picking onion seed. But Jesus wants to meet you wherever. So you've got to get beyond and make it hard. Whatever you do, work heartily. You cannot come up with any job because it's already within these boundaries. And you've got to do it heartily. That is fully from the soul. Literally, it means work from the soul. Not from the wrists, the hands, the arms, the brain, and all the things that get scratched and just a part of the curse. Work heartily from in here, and you can work around this. And this is where it starts. The whatever. One of the things men complain about is their job. I notice there's 3 tensions in men's job. There's 3 main tensions as I work with men in this area of work. The first tension is my job. We just covered it. It's whatever you want to call as work that gets you the paycheck. Whatever keeps food on the table. The second main issue that these guys were wrestling with, I found out, was my boss, my employer. That was another big tension. What I do and who it is that's over me and controlling me. And the third thing that I find these guys saying was how much I get paid for doing all that. How much I get paid for messing with that boss, dealing with that boss, putting up with that boss, and then how much I get paid for this particular work. Now, when you put those 3 together, I think Paul's addressing it. Whatever you do, you name the job. You can't outbid God here. Do it heartily from the soul, as for the Lord. This is your boss. You don't have to look to some guy. You don't have to look to somebody that owns all the paycheck, all of the funds. The guy that you sign off on when he says, all right, you did a good job, or you have to look up to when you're fired. This all of a sudden, knowing that you're working for the Lord. This must be so important, because I always think when the Bible says it once, it's kind of important. If he wraps up and says it twice, look how he ends. He ends it there in verse 24. You are serving the Lord Christ. Twice he brings this out to kind of get us a focus on get right. Get this focus on, no, you can't come in with anything you want, whatever is on the table. And you've got to realize it is for Jesus. It is Christ you're looking at, not the clock. It is Christ you're looking at, not the clock. And I mean, it's so easy to look at that clock because I hate this job. I'm cursed. It's a part of the sin. And you start looking at it, you don't realize this can be an act of worship. And there's nothing out there that's so bad that it cannot be an act of worship. It takes time. You don't do it every day. You don't do it all day long. It's not a 24/7 thing. It takes work to show up and just say, I'm going to start approaching this day as for the Lord. I want to serve Him. One of the first jobs I got after I came to be, I guess I was going into ministry. I worked my way through Biola at an auto parts warehouse, big warehouse, and they said job opportunities, driving forklift, delivery truck. I thought, I can do this. I'd love to do that. And I went in and signed up. And this guy, Kip, he was a boss. He was brand new. He was some sort of just new at this whole thing. I think he inherited some money. I'm going to buy a warehouse, fill it with auto parts, mufflers, batteries, you name it. We were going to start it from scratch. When do I get the keys to the forklift, Kip? What? You got to go upstairs and clean up. What's upstairs? I went upstairs and it was all the brochures and flyers that you could imagine. Thousands of them. Some in bundles, some in broken bundles, some in boxes, some in broken boxes, some thrown. It was a mess in a room about this size. He said, I want this in order by tomorrow. What? Oh, way, that's not fair. I want the forklift. I get this thing. I'm up there and I'm angry. I'm ticked off. Again, the man, he's out to get me, my boss. Wait a minute. And for the first time in my life, because I hadn't really encountered these principles before, do it as unto the Lord. I thought about, Jesus, how about if I do this for you? I can't do it for Kip. I'll do it for Jesus. And I just started looking. I got into it. Why did I get into it? Because Jesus got into it. And I now had a better boss. I had one that I really wanted to be a part of. And so boom, boom, boom. I started getting wood, shelving, cinder blocks, putting it up. I had raised Lord platforms. Oh, man. Woo! Jesus, this is for you. I left to go home, and Kip didn't even go upstairs. I faked like I shut the door, and I came back in. I heard him go upstairs. I had done this for Jesus. Was he going to notice? All of a sudden, I listen. I come up to the base of the stairs, and I hear, Jesus. So I think we're talking about two different Jesus, but it was all I needed. Really neat confirmation. And here he is. I'm just turning this over to the Lord, and it worked, and he loved it. He gave me just a big pat on the back the next day. Thank you for this. And by the way, here's the keys to the delivery truck. So anyway, that was my first little lesson. I was only probably 20 years old, but I remembered this verse, and I don't know how I remembered it, but boys, man, it works. It works. And it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen right away, but just start allowing it to be a part of your. And then we go to this last part about the pay. That third area that guys tend to really have tension about is pay. How much, what is going on, it doesn't matter if you're doing it for the Lord. There's a different type of inheritance. If you look at your passage, it says inheritance and reward. Why are both those things together? Isn't one an inheritance? What's the difference? Why doesn't he call it? Why doesn't he say your reward will be an inheritance or your inheritance will be a reward? He's saying there's something bigger than the humanistic reward that we call paycheck. It's bigger. It's called an inheritance, and that's based on relationship. That's based on a connection that I have with you, that Jesus, some of you are going to get an inheritance one of these days. Some of you are looking forward to it. Some of you may be living off an inheritance. I don't know. It's really a fun concept when it comes your way. It's really a bummer when you hear about it in someone else's life. It's the beauty of it. It's based on a relationship, and there's a more fullness to it, okay? And there's a lot of love involved in it. And so what we got to look at here is I got to quit. I want you to get to the questions. But, make your work your ministry, okay? Make that not a looking at the clock, but a looking at Christ. And help your other employers. If you're on the top, help them to do this, okay? If you're down here, encourage your boss, your kips in your life to do that. I was in a helicopter once with a guy who went to work every day. He did his job. I was doing a wedding on a volcano. There was a place in Hawaii, you may have heard about it, where the volcano came off like this and went around this guy's house. And this guy had a beautiful property. And he would do weddings on this property. You had to helicopter in to get to the wedding site. But it was obviously novel. A black lava all around you and a green, lush botanical garden. This guy that did the wedding, this guy who had a wedding done there, he married off his daughter and someone else, and there's a lot of relatives. He was very wealthy. He rented 3 helicopters. I was in one, and the pilot took a detour. So me, along with about 5 other people, went to the edge of the opening vent. And he says, I don't know if you've ever seen a volcano this close. And I'm thinking, no, and I don't need to. This jerk flew over until we started feeling, can you feel the heat? Yeah, I can feel the heat. Do you guys want a better look? No. He goes over, and now we're looking down in the hole. He tips us up. The shoulder straps are pulling away on my chest. And I'm smelling sulfur and feeling heat. I'm going, now I know he's a nut. And if I have to take controls of this, we're doomed. You know what he says at that point? He says, you know, I don't know if any of you here believe in hell, but I sure don't want to go there. And then he flew off. That's a little dramatic. But that's a guy using his work for witness. So we're going to let you break up into some little groups here, and you may not have time to go through all these questions, but they're an opportunity for you to say what you feel about work and how do you relate to these things that are in here. I was going to talk about bond servants, but I cut that part out. So if that question doesn't make sense, that's why. Do they have assigned tables?
They do, yeah, they read them.
So here's where you go.